Hi, welcome to RCSB Florida. In this video I'm going to talk to you about shooting wildlife videography with the Sony A7R IV. In my last video I talked to you about shooting stills and video with the A7R IV, but this time I'm concentrating just on what you can do with video. This includes the HD at 120 frames per second as well as 4K at 30. Here you see two birds feeding. The bird in the back is a marbled godwit, one with the curved bill that curves up. The bird in the front is a willet. And as I said, this is at 120 frames per second and it is in HD. I can't wait to get my hands on the A7S III, but so far nobody can tell me when they think it's going to be here. Sony's not talking as usual, so I'm hoping to get it sometime this month, but I wouldn't want to bet on that. Here's a snowy egret in the morning light with the light reflecting off the water. I thought that was a really nice shot. This is at normal frame rate. This is at 120 frames per second, obviously. Two brown pelicans coming in. Brown pelican is the smallest species of the pelican series. I think there's 7 species of pelicans, and they're the smallest with a wingspan of about 6.5 to 7.5 feet, which is not a small bird by any means, but for pelicans it's small. You'll see one toward the end of the video that has an 8 to 10 foot wingspan. As you can see, the A7R IV does maintain focus quite well. Just to give you a little bit of a background on how I set the camera up, I'm shooting zone, which I usually do for flying birds, trying to keep a spot of any kind, like expanded flexible spot or any of the spots on the bird while he's flying when they're erratic is almost impossible to do, especially with a 600mm lens. So it's hard enough to keep it steady and let alone move it around and keep track of him. So you pretty much have to go to zone. In this shot, I didn't change the setup. It was set up to where the zone, the bottom of the zone would be about 1/3 up the picture. But even as you see, even if I got focus on the gull, and it maintained focus on that gull, it knew what the subject was and it tracked it all the way till it landed. Even passing over the other birds, you see once it starts to land and it gets in the same focal plane pretty much, it focuses on some of the foreground as well. The reason I set it that way is to keep the camera from focusing on the foreground birds on the beach. In these shots, the brown pelicans diving for fish, the zone is set up to where the bottom of the zone is about where the waves are crashing, maybe a hair lower. That way I kept everything that I wanted to keep focused, which was mainly the pelicans in the upper 2/3 of the screen. It's about where that light wave is right now. There's 2 pelicans diving at once. That's a pair, a male and a female. The male being the one with the white and the female being the one with just brown on the head. The males are a little bit more attractive, but she's cute. As you can see from these shots, there were lots and lots of birds on the beach, and you'll see just how many later. There's a female brown pelican diving, and it maintained the focus all the way to the water and after. I think 120 frames per second gives you a really good shot at how, and tells you a lot about birds flying and how they fly and what their wings are really doing, which you really can't tell when they're going at full speed. Brown pelican landing. Another willet. Watch how the water beads off of his head. Their feathers are pretty much waterproof. And when he takes his head out of the water, it just kind of sheets right off. I thought that was interesting. And that's the kind of thing you wouldn't notice if it was at full speed. Your eyes wouldn't catch it. Got him a little bite to eat there. Here you'll really see the sheeting. See, you can see the sheeting as it just sheets right off of his head. This is pretty fair looking footage for it. Is HD 1080p, but it's not 4K, so it doesn't hold up to zooming in very much. You can zoom in a little and reframe a couple things, but you really can't zoom in like you can with 4K. The brown pelican female going up and right back down again. The reason you don't see them is they're actually catching these fish in what I would call a slough between the waves. That slough is shallower than the wave itself as it's crashing onto the beach and the wave behind it. So it makes the fish closer to the surface because the water isn't all that deep there. It makes it a little easier for them to catch. Another ship in the background. I'm at the same location I was for the last video, and I will tell you where I was before this video is over. 4 brown pelicans cruising down the beach. That's not a ship. Well, I guess it is. That's a yacht. That's a huge yacht going out to the Gulf. And as you can see, it maintains focus on the birds in the air and not on the birds on the beach. At times, they'll even be in the picture and inside, but it knows the difference. I'll show you one of those coming up here in a minute. This little guy, you can tell he's kind of just figure that at real speed. He is hauling. And it does struggle a little bit, and at one point it briefly loses focus slightly, and then it gets it back. But it was struggling with this because he's moving quite fast. There, it lost focus towards the end, as you saw. But overall, it did a really good job. I'm amazed these pelicans don't hurt themselves doing this. The female got a fish first, and here goes the male. I'm zoomed back a little bit here, so it's got a better depth of field. When I'm in at 600, there's almost no depth of field. As you can see there, I'm in tighter, and you can tell the birds in the foreground are now out of focus. Male brown pelican riding up over the wave and back down the other side. You look closely, you can see the feathers, the wind moving the feathers on his body and under his wings. And down we go. And here's a good example here. The pelican that was focused on is almost behind the bird on the beach, but it still maintained focus on the bird in the water, which was the original focus point. It's got a pretty good algorithm to do that. Watch how this bird uses his webbed feet to get off the water. Sailboat out in the Gulf. It was a beautiful day. And down we go. You will see me zoom slightly on these. I found out everybody keeps saying you can't zoom while you're focused and maintain focus. Well, that's not totally true. You cannot zoom fast and keep focus. It cannot keep up with it. But if you zoom in very slowly or out very slowly, it can keep up with it, and you'll maintain your focus. And he's about ready to get clobbered with this wave, so he takes off. Watch him actually push off on the wave itself as it comes up. He got out of there just in time, and it goes right back down again. And once again, the birds or the pelicans that are out of focus are actually inside the zone, but it knows what I was focused on originally, and it maintains focus. And it looks like this wave's going to clobber him, but they know when it is and when it's not. He'll just ride up over the top of it. But it'll break right after he gets off the top of it. And up he goes. You can see his feet in the water. The water's pretty clear. You can't find a better way to test a camera than with flying birds. If it'll maintain focus on flying birds doing this, it's a pretty good focusing camera. Which is the main reason I bought this camera. It wasn't for the stills, it was for being able to do this. And there, once again, the birds' heads are almost in the zone, but it maintained the focus on the original brown pelican that I focused on. These two brown pelican females are going to come in and land. And in slow motion, you can just see so easily, how they come in and make just such a soft landing and just sit on the beach. Of course, they're a big bird, but they have a huge wingspan. Even though, like I say, they're the smallest species of pelicans, but it's still a 6.5 to 7.5 foot wingspan. That's a big bird. I'm 6 feet, so his wings are taller than I, or wider than I am tall. Now here you're going to see some birds flushing here. The birds in the front are willets. And I didn't know it when I was doing this, what flushed these birds. I found out later. The entire beach is about 1/3 of a mile of sandbar here that these birds are on, and it is just covered in birds. And all of those birds will eventually flush. And I found out the main reason was a peregrine falcon flew over and went down the beach, and they all freaked out. The birds in the front are willets, and they briefly go out of focus. I zoomed back a little bit too fast, but it focuses on those birds in the air. It obviously focuses on the birds nearest the lens. So the birds in the front will be the ones that are being focused, but I'm zoomed out and the depth of field is pretty good, so the birds even in the middle are not too out of focus. The ones towards the back are getting out of focus, but this is, without a doubt, the largest number of birds I have seen in the air at one time since the last time I was at Pocosin Lakes National Wildlife Refuge up in North Carolina, photographing tundra swans and snow geese. When this is all said and done, there will literally be thousands of birds in the air. And I just kept this running. This is a kind of a long segment. I apologize if you don't like birds flying, but it'll show you what this camera can do. And you can see now that it's focused on the near birds, and it's lost focus on the ones in the rear. Of course, the ones sailing through there, you can't expect it to get focus on that. But it did go back and focus on the birds behind. I was panning a little bit, it was hard to see. But this goes on for several minutes before it calms down. But it does focus on these birds quite well. And obviously with 61 megapixels, it does a fantastic job. I thought at first a photographer flushed the birds, which is usually the case. But now you can see some of the other birds that flushed that came from the other end of the beach are now coming back towards the north, and these other birds that flushed where I was are still going south. But you can tell that is a lot of birds in the air. That's literally thousands of birds. And what you're seeing is only a small part of them. They're to the left of me and to the right of me, and actually a little below me. These birds are fairly high. I'll tilt that in a minute and you'll see where the gulf is. But I mentioned that the willets didn't flush in the beginning. Well, they finally flushed, and that's them going across the screen at the bottom. There was really nothing left on the beach when this was all said and done. Some of the smaller birds came back fairly quickly, But all of these birds, it took them minutes to come back. I think this one sequence was over 5 minutes. And of course it'll be even longer in slow motion. But this is, if you want to see what a camera can do to focus, this is about as good a test as you can give it. I know I'm going to think when it's all said and done that I made this segment too long, but I thought this was interesting too, with this many birds in the air. You don't see this very often. For some strange reason, the gulls that were part of the birds that were on the beach are now landing in the Gulf. But a gull can float around in the Gulf, and it's normal to do that. They do it all the time. But the rest of these shorebirds really don't. They feed in the water, but they don't float around. The pelicans obviously do, and the gulls do. But the skimmers, as you see here, all the black skimmers, and the terns do not. And of course the shorebirds do not as well. They feed in the shallow water, but they don't sit out on the water. Some of them can, but you rarely ever see them doing it. But the gulls are comfortable out there. So for some reason they formed a line almost the same distance from the shore all the way down and made a long line of gulls sitting out on the water. To give you a hint of where I am, the lighthouse you see at the bottom in the center is Egmont Key Lighthouse. And that would tell anybody that's can even come close to coming to this place where it is. I am at Fort DeSoto Park, and this is North Beach. My favorite place to test cameras. I think these black skimmers are beautiful when they turn like this and get there. You can see the tops of their wings. They're a beautiful bird. They're a funny bird as well, with the long bottom beak and the small top beak for skimming across the water. They also have very short legs, so they kind of waddle when they walk. They're funny little birds, but beautiful as well. You can see a few shorebirds have landed, but very few compared to what there were on the beach before. And these birds will do this for quite a while before they finally land. I've cut out a lot of it, but they still move around. And I kind of show the video until these birds, most of them, land, to kind of show you. And it's kind of more informational than anything else. If it's boring you, I'm sorry, but I thought some people might want to see this. You can see the gulls lined up almost in a straight line out in the Gulf. And like I said, they're almost the same distance from shore all the way down. I don't know whether it was just at the edge of where the waves started to form before they broke on the shore, or, you know, so it wouldn't have to be riding up and down so much, or what. But they picked that distance and they stayed there pretty much. And they were out there for quite a while. They were the last ones to come in. They sat out in the Gulf for a long time. And then eventually, one by one, they'd eventually come back in and land. But you see a few sandpipers and a few other birds out there, some marble godwits and a few other birds that are there, but not anywhere near the number that was there before. But they're gathering, and they'll be back on the beach before you know it. But the peregrine falcon really spooked them. I was surprised that just one raptor could do that to these birds, but because these birds are pretty much, a lot of these birds are as big as the peregrine falcon. The skimmers are pretty good sized birds, but you know, a peregrine falcon could probably still take one. But you can see the camera is doing a pretty good job of staying in focus. Once again, you can see the tops of their wings and how pretty they are when they're flying. They kind of make an oval. They'll come up and they'll go along about where they're going to land eventually. And you can see that some of them have already started to land. And once that starts, then it kind of ends quickly. They'll make do one or two more passes for some of them. And some of them this will be their last pass. They'll land right now, as you see. But they only land so far down. If they get too far away from the main group, which is this group you're looking at here, is like pan to the left, it gets thinner and thinner, even though there are more and more birds landing, but then they start getting spread out pretty well, and then the rest of the group will make another pass and come back. They don't like to get too far away from the group. They are very social birds. They won't be all spread out. You see, they've now gotten to where there's not that many left. There's one bird way out there just landed, and now they're going to all come back and do the same thing again, and then pretty much the rest of them will land. But the terns, you can see the terns and a lot of the other birds are still out there on the wing. These are some of the first big birds that actually landed. And this will be the last turn for most of them. You can see that a lot of them have landed. And now these birds will land in that same group. There's some of the terns behind them still flying, and they're not landing yet. But these are by far the prettiest birds flying of any of them, so. And for those of you that want to know what a Piper Cherokee looks like at 120 frames, there you go. And now we have the largest group of species of pelican. This is the American white pelican, and they have the largest wings, and their wingspan is 8 to 10 feet. And these birds can weigh up to, according to the specs, can weigh up to 90 pounds. That's a lot of bird. And a lot of beautiful bird too. They're funny birds. They are very social. They're even more social than the skimmers are. These stay pretty close, but these guys, you can see how close they are together. And I have never seen them in a group. Matter of fact, this is the largest group of American white pelicans I have seen in several years. The last time I saw a group this size was at Vieira Wetlands over in Melbourne, and that was several years ago. And I haven't seen a group that's this size since. And these happened to be at Fort DeSoto. They came in the day after I shot most of this, and then I went back, which was on a Thursday, then I went back on a Saturday, which I try not to go on the weekends because it gets very crowded. But I'm glad I did, because these American white pelicans were there, and I got an opportunity to shoot these guys. But they are, a couple of things about them you'll notice, that they, not only are they really close together, but because they're really close together, the ones that are close together tend to have their beaks facing the same direction, so they'll be all facing the same direction. And I'll show you that in a still that I have later. I only took a few stills the entire day, but I did take one of them because I thought it was kind of funny instead of shooting the video, but it shows these guys lined up and facing it. But again, this is the 120 frames a second, as you see. And of course, the camera is focusing on the birds nearest to the lens. So it's focusing on the birds right out in the front, and it holds focus to about maybe the middle, and then the back birds are a little out of focus. And you can see the ones flying in are quite a ways out of focus. And unfortunately, with a long lens, there's not much you can do about that. I'm shooting it. This is at about f11. So I got some depth of field, but nothing like you would have with a wide-angle lens. Wide-angle lens, pretty much everything in the picture being focused. The longer the lens, the shorter the depth of field. One of the laws of physics you just can't get around. And I'm zooming back here, so see, I am zooming, and it is maintaining focus, and I've zoomed back quite a ways. I'm going to zoom back to kind of show the entire group. And it's about to come in. That's the group right there. Then we cut to another shot. And you'll notice these birds are, look at how they're facing. They're almost all facing the same way. But they're all kind of pedaling the same way. So you would kind of expect that, but sometimes they'll be facing the same direction, all of them. And here you see a group. This is one of the few stills that I did shoot. But here's what I'm talking about. It looks like the class photo. Everybody's kind of facing the same direction, from one side all the way to the other. There's one down here towards the end that is facing the other direction slightly, but he's at the same angle, but just facing to the left instead of to the right, and he's right there in the middle. But I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, smile, say cheese, look at the camera. And then we have the last, still in the last part of this video as far as the pictures go. These are marbled godwits, the one with his bill under his wing, and the other two are interesting birds. They have a curved up beak, kind of like an avocet. Not quite as curved as the avocet, but not too far away. And that is that. So, what do I think of the Sony A7R IV when it comes to shooting video? I think it is probably the best mirrorless camera on the market today. The Canon R5 is about its only competition. It does a fantastic job of tracking your subject and staying with it. At times I say to myself, how does it do that? I don't know, but I can tell you it does. I've just shown you that it does with some of the shots in this video. If you're looking for a high megapixel camera for video, this could be the right one for you. It is not without its faults, however, but they show up more in stills than video. I've said in previous videos that this camera is very noisy. At least the copy I have is very noisy. If you plan on buying this camera, plan on also buying Topaz Denoise AI. It does a fantastic job controlling the noise and keeping the high resolution. I think if it were not for this software, I might have sent this camera back. By the way, I have no affiliation with Topaz or Sony. My opinions are just that, my opinions. This is not a cheap camera by any means, and if you do just still photography, you would be better off with the A7R III and save the extra money. You could also get one used from KEH or one of the other reputable dealers that sell used equipment and save even more. With 61 megapixels, this camera is approaching medium format territory, which is something exceptional for a 35mm format camera. Shooting this camera reminds me very much of the Canon 7D Mark II when it comes to noise. You can't underexpose this camera or the noise comes right up with the shadows in post. I have seen reviews on this camera that say differently, but that is what my camera does. I can only tell you what I have experienced firsthand. All that being said, I still think it's a good camera, but make sure it's right for you before you dish out the cash. It's the middle of October and I still have no information on when I will receive my A7S III, but I hope it is soon. It is supposed to be even better than the A7R IV for focus and focus tracking. You'll be the first to know once I get it. I have several videos planned for this camera. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more of my videos, please hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate that. If you want to be notified when I post a new video, hit the bell button. Thanks for watching, and get out there and shoot. You can't learn anything new sitting in your easy chair.